hit. Don't get me back to good bullshit.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Lady Freedom here, coming at you with another raw narrative. This week I have had some really crazy technical difficulties with YouTube and StreamYard, so I apologize for any delays and I'm sorry I haven't been able to go live this week, but I wanted to bring to you something that I've been working on, something that we were supposed to discuss live, but I did make a video with a part 1 on the Steve Fisher interview with the Lore Lodge. So I hope you enjoy it. I, again, am sorry about the difficulties with YouTube and StreamYard. So without further ado, let's take a look at what was said during the interview with Steve Fisher and the Lore Lodge. Let's watch.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lore Lads, the official podcast of the Lore Lodge. We have a pretty special show for you guys tonight. A couple of weeks ago over on Twitter, after we did one of our Sebastian Rogers live streams, I got into a bit of an interaction with Steve Fisher here, who's a private investigator working on the case. It was a little bit tense, but I think we've gotten to a good spot where we agree we're doing this for the right reasons. We're in the same place mentally, even if we, at the moment, disagree on what may have happened in this case. So, I think what I have been wondering this whole time is, where is the other side coming from in this? And I thought there's no better way to get to the bottom of that, no better way to understand some of the claims that have come out from you, Steve, than to sit here and have you on the show to ask you. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, I'll give you the floor. All right. So I guess one question I think that I would have and a lot of other people had is, you say you're a private investigator. Obviously, you're licensed in several states. States tend to have different regulations. Here in Pennsylvania, you have to be a detective for 3 years first. So one thing I think a lot of people would love to know is, what are your credentials and how did you get into this line of work?
So originally, I thought my career path was going to be aviation, and it oddly started through that. I got my commercial pilot's license, and I was building time. One of the jobs I got as an apprentice was with the state of Texas and their aircraft fleet, and one department being the Attorney General's office, and missing persons ran through there. And there would be searches that would be conducted that using the state aircraft, and so that was my first kind of introduction to it. And then from there I went as a fixed wing pilot to a private team in Texas that this is 25 years ago. So this is before thermal drones and whatnot. So we were mainly looking for like downed aircraft or people that were lost in really remote areas using FLIR and whatnot. And so I always have stayed with search and rescue, and I started, search and rescue involves a degree of investigation, right?
Yeah.
It has to usually, you have investigators working with you because it's usually you're a branch, or extension for that search of law enforcement.
Right.
And from there, it just kind of, it went into where I became in-house investigator for a law firm that specialized in family law. So there was custodial interference cases, which are essentially, these are dealing with wealthier cases and stuff, and kind of trickier situations. And from there, then I went ahead and decided to get my PI license, just because there is a fine line when you're working search and rescue, as to where you cross over into, actually working as an investigator.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where it evolved from.
Gotcha. So it was kind of the logical next step. You were getting more directly involved, trying to make a career out of this.
Well, I never intended, to be honest with you, the investigation to be a full-time career. There was other careers. I've had other careers that I love, and I, to be honest with you, I miss, but this just has become, there hasn't been any gaps. I would, a lot of people know this already. I'm a fashion photographer, and I've done well in that industry, and I certainly, but I haven't taken any jobs in the last 2 or 3 years. I haven't shot for any magazines or anything because I've just been overwhelmed with this. And so I don't know if this is like a permanent thing or not. It was never meant to be. It just because of some success I've had that's been publicized. I tends to, be one case after another.
Gotcha. So with this case specifically, I know for me, I first saw the name Sebastian Rogers while I was covering Riley Strain. And I went, okay, well, there's not really any connective tissue here. They're 7 years apart. One is on the autism spectrum, and for the most part seems to be, a homebody. The other one is a 22-year-old at University of Missouri. Different, one's rural, one's city. It just didn't seem to have connective tissue. So, really, and I'm going to be straight up. I still think foul play seems like a strong possibility in Riley Strain's case as well. But so I saw the name Sebastian Rogers, and I went, well, weird, but doesn't look like it's related. And it's also ongoing. I don't want to get into this. I started covering Riley Strain only after they found him. So because I don't like to get involved in ongoing cases for exactly the reason you might guess after the last 2 weeks. It's not my thing. I'm a historian. I'm not a missing person investigator on the ground. So for me, I was like, all right, not going to touch this. And then as you know, I was contacted by somebody who asked me to look into it, and that's how I got started. So for you, you're out in California, right?
Yeah.
So
I live in California.
Primarily you're out in California. So what was it that brought you into this case in rural Tennessee?
Riley Strain. I was the investigator for the family on that case. Yeah.
Oh, so you worked with the Strain family?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. They brought me in. I was consulting with them while he was still missing, just as a search and rescue expert on potential areas to search, and we were I was working on calculating when he might surface if he was in the water based on water temps and his body weight and stuff, and where he might be. And so so I was on the Riley Strain case, and listen, I had no intention of getting involved in this case either, because my former PI partner, for lack of a better word, we didn't have an agency there, but we did all our cases together. She's based in Nashville. Mm-hmm. She was actually on the case. She was retained by Seth.
Steve Fisher is referring to Chloe PI.
And she is an amazing investigator, and there's absolutely no reason for me to be involved. And one, I mean, she went to brought me in, she didn't need my help, and two, I it'd be weird, it just wasn't an option. I wasn't going, I hadn't talked to Chris or anything.
It's absolutely weird in my opinion. It's weird in everyone else's opinion who's been following the case, because at that time, Seth was supposed to have been working with Chris and Katie, but Chris and Katie were not working with Seth. They only said they were. And then Seth hires Chloe PI, who has ties to SF Investigates. To my knowledge, Heather and Chloe were working pro bono.
But what I was doing, just as a civilian, is I was putting on my Twitter some based off search and rescue, theory and analysis and planning, areas that I thought were search grids that were smart to search for Sebastian, based on some decision point analysis and whatnot. And through that, I did get some calls from various people that were close to the investigation, including people in law enforcement, and I talked to them, and then I concluded the Riley Strain case. I did a 293-page final report on that, and so a couple months ago, or it's been more than a couple months now, but one time when I had come out on one of the trips to Nashville, because I was going back and forth, I went out to Hendersonville at like 5:30 in the morning just to see the area. I just wanted to see it, and I realized how different it was from what I had really imagined, and how kind of that that drone searching really wasn't a possibility in those conditions, because it's just so thick and everything out there, and it kind of changed things. And through that, I got in touch with Chris at one point, and Chris and I talked several times. He was very, rightfully so. You know, I don't think he knows. He didn't know who to trust and whatnot. And we talked here and there. And then, you know, I met with him on one of my other trips out there. We met for. He had me in his house. He said, "Just come to the house and let's sit down and talk." And that's kind of how it started. He didn't hire me there. But we started talking more, and then you know, as I came back, and I also have 2 other open cases in East Tennessee of 2 females that are Holly Bobo Act missing persons under TBI. So I'm there quite a bit, and through that, it ended up getting to the point where they decided that they, you know, wanted to bring me on board.
Gotcha. So when you say that you had spoken to law enforcement and just had some people, you know, reach out to you, were these Sumner County? Were these Nashville, TBI?
It was people that were involved in the search and rescue, and they just had it was somebody that had a question about why some of my grids were going, and it just had to do with more of a search theory based on lost person behavior. So it was not. I'll tell you, it was not one of the detectives. It was not any of the agents involved. It was just somebody involved in the search and rescue efforts, which they're an extension of law enforcement.
All right. So, well, when you say, was this one of, like, there's, you know, there'll be, you know, like, trying to think of an exact example, but, you know, you've got organizations like United Cajun Navy, for example, that come in and they get involved. They might be requested by law enforcement, but they're not actually a law enforcement organization. Were the people you were talking to, were they like such and such county search and rescue?
Yeah, they were with the official search and rescue. No, United Cajun Navy, just to be clear, I have nothing to do with.
Oh, I know you don't have anything. I was just trying to go for an example of like a private organization versus a county one.
Yeah, and I don't want to, you know, like, I don't want to build too much on that one because there's not much to it besides there was people like reaching out, I think, to various experts. I mean, there's other large search and rescue operators around the country that have commented on this case on Twitter and stuff like that, and I think they interact with those people. When it gets to be, you know, there was a lot of teams involved in this. I mean, and when it gets to be that big of an effort, and there's just nothing, like literally nothing to show for it, you know, it's you start reaching out to other teams, because all of our you know, those models that we make, we build them on lost person behavior models. Those are all made from these algorithms through that. It's a program that went through the Department of Justice, just like NCMEC is a division of that are based on all the old search and rescue, all the old missions going back as far as you can go, put into these databases, all these variables. And now we have the ability to go in and key in, you know, hey, we have a 15-year-old with autism. He's in this environment and this temperature. You know, this is this mental mindset. You know, it'll give us these unbelievably accurate models. You know, and it'll show that it'll give us 25, 50, and 75% probability lines. You know, of probability of detection and what those are. And in his case, I think it was 75% probability of detection within 3.6 miles, and it gives you how long the you know, like what the most likely scenario to find them in is, and that's something I tweeted the whole tactical report on that too. It wasn't like anything secretive or anything.
Gotcha. All right, so that's I mean, that's all very helpful to know and understand. I just want to, you know, there's, like I said, there's been a lot of people claiming that you know, haven't even talked to law enforcement, or that these people don't know who you are, and then, you know, I see that and I'm like, all right, well, who knows what here, you know?
So let me be clear on that. So although I have a very good working relationship with TBI in my other cases, and in this case, I'm not trying. So
Here we go down the rabbit hole with Steve. He can't answer a straightforward question with a straightforward answer.
when I came into this case, I wish I knew the exact date.
Steve can't give exact dates, just like Chris.
It's only been what, 3 months, 4 months. This case was
This is where the start and they don't stop.
law enforcement wanted nothing to do with anybody in this case. Right. You know what I mean? It was burned to the ground. were like, we don't want any part of what's going on online. They're shut down, and I don't try to communicate with them. I don't. So no. Am I working side by side with law enforcement in this case? No, and I'm not trying to either. I don't reach out to them. They don't reach out to me. They know, they 100% know I'm there. We gave them formal indication, and they responded back, and they said he's welcome on the case, and that was it. So, but we have not tried to. I'm not trying to work like I do in some cases, and that goes case by case. It just depends, the flow of the case. But in this case, there's no reason for me to.
Right.
Steve says Sebastian's case was burned to the ground and that law enforcement didn't want nothing to do with anyone. And I can see that point. But facts are important, and why wouldn't he be following law enforcement's lead and taking what they're saying as gospel? They do know more than any of us. Maybe it's just easier for Steve to make things up as he goes along. Either way, I don't see him as a credible source.
Because it's too divided. If they worked with me, they know that Seth's people would just turn it into a whole PR stunt, and say, well, you're not working with us. And so to avoid that and not give them any drama, I don't need, we're just doing my own investigation.
Gotcha.
So I don't want to give the impression that I'm saying I'm working with law enforcement on this. I'm not.
Got it. That definitely clears some of the stuff up. But I'm sure that a lot of this is just some of the more drama-oriented channels, like taking one thing that they think they understand and then blowing it out to this whole community who then repeats
Jupiter's
it.
delight.
So if you're not working with law enforcement, and it kind of became, it sounds like it was kind of an almost accidental thing that you ended up getting involved. Obviously you have, I don't mean to say that like it was completely by chance, but that like you weren't looking to get involved in this case.
Yes, right.
But so then you did, and you said you had some conversations with Chris Proudfoot, and then that you ended up going and sitting down with him. At what point, though, did this become an official working relationship? And what I mean by that is, I guess there would be two stages to that. There's, you're actually actively communicating with him and saying, hey, I'm helping you out, versus, he's paying you or somebody is paying you. Like when did that switch happen?
Let me just pull up the retainer agreement so I can tell you exactly.
Yeah, I guess the question would be when were you officially hired?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, so I can give you the exact answer. I'm trying to find the retainer agreement. It's I don't know. It'll take me 1 second here. Sebastian. It was. Oh, here we go. It's 11/14 of 24.
Okay, so it was November of last year.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So that's the official date.
Couple months.
So who was paying you or is paying you?
Well, I don't want to disclose that, but I'm retained. I'll tell you that Chris and Katie are the signers on the engagement letter and retainer agreement, and but it's on behalf of. I'm working on behalf of Sebastian. I am not. My client is Sebastian, and they're the guardians that have the ability to sign.
This is one of the themes in Sebastian's case that really gets my goat. They want to sit there and say that it's all about Sebastian when asked a straightforward, simple question about who's paying for Steve Fisher's retainer. They want to all of a sudden go back to, it's all about Sebastian, it's all about Sebastian. I'm sorry, but for this side of the family, it's anything but.
One thing I want to make clear is that I've never, ever worked for a defense attorney or a prosecutor.
No one said you did, and no one asked you that.
I'm boots on the ground. I find people. I'm more search and rescue than anything.
Who have you found?
When I work, if I was to find any, real evidence that Chris and Katie were involved, I would be the first one. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate for a second to contact TBI or whoever it may be.
The fact that you took a large sum of money from them tells me different.
I'm not there to play defense or anything. I'm there to find Sebastian, and if they have anything involvement, then I'll make sure they're held accountable. I don't know what happened to Sebastian. I wish I could say I'm on the verge of cracking this case. I do not know. I don't know where he is, and I don't know what happened to him. And anything is on the table. So I'm not protecting them.
He gives a negative answer,
So
but shakes his
that
head
definitely leads
affirmatively.
me into where I was about to go. I do just want to clarify one thing really quick, which was,
Sure.
you said Chris and Katie are the ones, so they are officially employing you. You're just not disclosing who is funding it. They signed the paperwork, is what I'm saying.
Yes, they signed the paperwork. I mean, I think, yeah, there's no like trickery there. I just don't want to get too deep into it. But yeah, I mean,
I'm just trying to make sure that like we're putting
Yes,
out what you
I'm
said in the
employed-
most direct way possible.
I'm employed by them, but I consider myself working for Sebastian, and that's how my agreements are written. That I'm there working for the missing person, and this person's, signing as either as their guardian or as their executor or whatever it may be, depending on their age. If they're, since they don't have the ability to do it.
Right. So, one thing, I mean, you may or may not be willing to answer this, but one thing that I've seen from you on social media, at least I've seen screenshots of tweets, and then I've gone and looked for a few of them to see if they're real. There's been some suggestions that you typically charge, I believe it was a $15,000 retainer fee and then $700 an hour. Is that correct?
The $15,000 minimum is correct. The $700 an hour is not correct. So everything I say gets taken seriously. So I get people, for instance, Bullhorn Betty.
Yeah.
she gets on and talks about how, because she follows me from case to case to case. So she gets on and talks about how, oh my God, how dare he charge family $2,000 and I'm like, listen, I don't charge. Don't put it out there that I charge $2,000, because then people are think I can be traveling around the country for a $2,000 retainer. I can't be doing that. I'm like, I'm much more expensive than that. And so sarcastically, like at one point, there was another guy giving me a hard time about this. And at one point I put in my bio, my rate, my hourly rate is $2 million per hour. And the guy took it literally and started sending it all around the internet. It's just, so some of the stuff is like, it's like, you can't deal with these people anymore. And it's like,
Yeah.
so that ridiculous, I'll be that ridiculous. And so no, it's not. I will tell you my rates, my standard, rack rates are probably average out. And I charge a daily rate. I'll just be honest with you. I don't do hourly. So I charge because it's more, search based. So when I'm working on a day rate. So it's usually, about $2,200 a day. And then there might be it depends if we're bringing in thermal drones, underwater ROVs, because I own all that equipment. It can vary based on that too, so, but we do have minimums, because if I'm going across the country and bringing all this equipment, and if other operators are coming in, then, but with that said, about 70% of my cases are pro bono. So the money that I do bring in, I've been fortunate to work in some cases where families have the ability to pay that, and then that funds some other cases, so, because I've never done a GoFundMe or anything like that.
Got it. But in this case, you are a paid investigator.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I am. Yeah.
So I guess, leading into the next set of questions I had based off of, what you just said prior to that question. You say you don't know what happened. If you did have evidence that it was Chris and Katie, you would take that right to the TBI. Do you think it's possible, I guess, that they are in some way involved in Sebastian's disappearance? And I don't mean that they were strict or difficult parents and he ran away. I mean, do you think it's possible that there is a foul play angle where they were involved?
If there is, I just have not seen any evidence of it yet. And I think that people got to realize that it's been a long time now. We're coming up on a year pretty quick, and you got TBI, you got Sumner County, you got FBI to an extent. You had Secret Service involved at the beginning. These are agencies. Like if there was something there that was really obvious, or even not that obvious, somebody would have been charged by now, even if without Sebastian being found. but there's nothing, and and it's baffling. It really is. It's really hard to wrap your head around this case. How this got pulled off, or
Did he just say how this got pulled off?
whatever has happened, and I don't know what's happened.
I can definitely
But I
agree with you
haven't
there.
seen
Wow,
it.
just wow.
But every day, do I run those scenarios through my head every day? Like, could it be this? Could it be that? That involves it. Absolutely, 100%. Do I do the same thing with Seth? 100%. Do I do it with possible extended family members? 100%. Do I think it could just be a autistic walkaway situation, which is even though he's not an eloper, I get it. It still happens. 50% of autistic kids will run away. 50% will run away by the time they turn 18. So it still could happen. And so do I think about that, and that he could be in a really weird crevice somewhere close to the house, kind of like we saw with Caleb Harris? I wonder about that too. But I don't know. I wish I had the answers. There's so little to go on in this. It's like we've collected a lot of evidence now, stuff that should help us lead to him, and it's not leading us to him.
Yeah. So it did occur to me, like, maybe there was a situation like that where Sebastian is somewhere closer to home than everybody thinks.
So I will say that I firmly believe and I don't know if it is, but if it's a situation where he snuck out of the house or walked away on his own, and he unfortunately hit a crevice or something like that, and this wasn't an abduction, then I firmly believe he's within 0.7 miles of that house still. I don't care how big the search and rescue effort was. I've been doing search and rescue long enough to know that people get missed, because when we're searching, we're searching certain, we're doing hasty searches at the beginning, not grid searches, and those are have about a 40% probability of detection, 30 to 40%, because what we're banking on is that the person we're looking for will have the ability to also see us and call out to us. And between the two, so we're covering more area quicker, but we miss people, and that happens. And then that's when these people get found. They're like, well, wait, they were like, I think Caleb was 300 yards or 300 feet or yards from his apartment. And there's tons of other, there was a girl in Tennessee, her name just escaped me, but it was in a cornfield right behind the house that had been searched multiple times. So it happens. And one of the things that has really worried me recently, since I got a lot of surveillance footage from the neighborhood, over 100 hours worth, is watching the day of the 26th. There's cameras that are point out over the construction area, and watching that all day, including when the canines are there and there's other searchers, but the heavy machinery does not stop at all during the day, and not throughout the whole day. And that includes just, I'm not sure, the bulldozers or whatever, the loaders of dirt, just filling this one retention pond area.
Here is where Steve Fisher shares his theory without sharing his theory.
One after another after another. And it worries me, like, could he have been hiding in a corner of that deep hole or something? And then the first load of the day, does it accidentally, I hate to say that, and it's tragic, and I know his parents may have been watching this, but it's a reality that we have to think about. And so that's why we're talking about, ground penetrating radar, now that we've seen that footage and been like, my God, because I thought that, or assumed that the construction equipment stopped for the day, but it didn't. And they were moving so much dirt,
I know one other thing that you brought up in a couple other interviews that you were mentioning was a lot of the caves and the areas behind that space. And I was just curious, do you know to what degree, because I know in previous conversations you've said that there were a few of them that you didn't feel comfortable going in because you didn't have anybody with you. Do you know to what extent they've been searched at all? So
I know that, so I will say I have access to the what are SAR topo maps, which are what all the first responders use. And so,
and again, these are the maps, and they were shown to us on the day 4 presser, 4 days into Sebastian being missing. So now you're saying there was a grid search done? A $15,000 retainer? Are you kidding me?
So they did clear a few of those caves, but there are a ton of them. And there's one in particular that they said that they couldn't clear because when they got to it, it was already partially collapsed. Like it looked like a recent collapse. And also, like, we just on the last search out there, we found several of these. I don't even know what you call them. They're like huge vents, and they drop straight down. And I mean, it'd be really easy to hit one of those. So I, we cleared a couple. There's a couple that I wasn't comfortable with because I'm not on. Like search and rescue teams usually have cave specialists, and I'm not. I'm claustrophobic. I'm not on that team. Never will be. But there's other people like Stephen Crabtree and Cletus and stuff that are local, and they know these areas really well, and they have been cleared. They've been dropping dropping cameras down into these, and they've cleared a lot. But there's so many of them left.
Big surprise. Steve name drops Crabtree and Cletus. Cletus has no cave experience, and I love how he said that he's claustrophobic, but he can still drop a camera down a hole.
But then you go, and they have to be checked. But then you go, if he doesn't have shoes, how the hell is he out there? And so that's the other baffling thing. So to answer your question, there's still a lot that need to be cleared.